and this is the May koha-US circulation sig. George is currently reviewing upgrade notes related
Yeah,
to
we're
circulation.
just, the suggestion was, the question was, is there anything cool coming up in the 2111 release, which Bywater customers will be upgraded to this summer? And so I just opened the release notes, and for circulation, we skipped over all those things that nobody cares about, like cataloging and acquisitions. Those things circulation people never use. So when we get down to the circulation suggestion or section, the first enhancement says highlight patrons from logged in library in patron searches. So it looks like when you do a search, like if you search for the name Smith and you're logged in at your library, all of the results that are at this that have the same home library will be highlighted in green, so you can more easily pick out the ones that belong to the library that you're currently logged in at. And the question is, do you have a link? And so I'll put the link in the chat box. That's where the 2111 release notes are. And I'm down in the circulation section. The next one says add digital scan as an optional format for article requests. I think when you do an article request, we don't have it set up, so this is just a guess here, but there you have an option of how you want the article delivered, and they're adding there's a new option for digital copy. So when you do an article request, you can say, out of these options, they're adding a new option to that drop down for digital copy. Highlight transfers on the check-in screen table. So it looks like when you check something in, if it's supposed to be transferred to another library, that row in the table in the checkout on the checkout check-in page will be highlighted to let you know that it's something that needs to be transferred. So that sounds useful. The claims return table should be filtered by default to show unresolved items. So instead of seeing the whole table and then having to filter it, will default to unresolved. Add some new parts to the article request process. Limit the number of active article requests per day. Add a default cancellation reason to the article requests. So add disclaimer text to the article request feature. This lets you include text that patrons need to accept before they can place an article request. So essentially adding a terms for service to the article request interface. Batch printing of article request slips. The overdue report, add a shelving location column. Okay. Housebound details should be text area, not text inputs. So it changes the size and shape of the text box for inputting data about housebound borrowers. And then article request, a checkbox for the table of contents. And that's the end of the circulation enhancements. Excuse me.
Sounds like a lot of work went into article requests.
Yeah, and it looks like a bunch of those are sponsored by RIJKS Museum. So I'm not sure who exactly that is. Then it looks like there are some fines and fees enhancements to clarify account offset types. So it's just changing the list of what the account offset types are. It looks like the new list will include create, apply, overdue increase, overdue decrease, and void. I don't know what they are now, so I don't know how that compares with what they are now. It seems to me they might be single letter codes. So that certainly would clarify things. Another enhancement, clarify how cash management fits together. We're not using the cash register, so I'm not sure what that's enhancing. This enhancement serves to clarify the parts of the cash management module by updating names or pages and embellishing the breadcrumbs. So it's more adding, probably expanding and for changing, adding a good vocabulary to the cash management parts. Action buttons should have a class. Well, that's not a bad idea. For those of you that go in there and mess around with things, it's always nice to have something to hook onto, like a class or an ID, so you can write your jQuery and mess it all up. Details for, it's another cash management one. Should see details for refunds on the register summary page. Add tests for voided payment and voided write-offs. So that does it for fines and fees. Hold requests. Cancel holds in bulk. I wonder if this is
one. Oh, they were in the bug squashing event. They were doing some stuff this morning. On that page. It adds checkboxes along the left line of the table, and then there's like a cancel hold button at the top next to the update holds button.
Well, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
Is there a select all button?
I don't think so. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's dangerous.
Something to hide. Or I don't know if you can turn it on and off or not.
I don't know. There's a huge potential for accidents to happen that way.
I would assume it's permission locked, although we're having struggles with that permission lately.
Yeah.
Because they changed how it works and people can't delete holds if we don't allow them to move holds around. So I had to write some jQuery to work around that.
Yep, I've gotten tired of trying to work around those, and so I just gave everybody permission to modify holds, but then I removed all of the controls that allow them to do that. So
yep, that's what I did too.
Add visual feedback on overridden pickup location on the patrons page. I don't know what that means. There's no good description of that in the release notes. So I opened up the bug. I'm still, even reading the bug, I'm not sure exactly what that does. One thing it does do is it changes the selects when you're overriding a pickup location to a select 2 instead of the normal select. Improve the display of multiple holds during the holds process. Add option to limit the holds queue report by shelving location or collection code.
I've seen that one too. Just adds more drop downs when you hit run holds queue, which is probably going to confuse my people, but I assume it defaults to all. So they just have to keep hitting them and ignore those new drop downs.
You guys actually use the holds queue? We do a report for just the regular pull holds and all that. So
yeah, I do a report because for the longest time, particularly at the library I started with Koha at, we would have volunteers come in and we would print off the holds queue for them to go pull those, but it would have patron names on it, and so I didn't want to be giving something that had people's names on it to a volunteer. So I wrote a report that omitted the borrower names and just use card numbers. That has changed, but I was able to do a lot of things that I liked better with the report than with the built-in holds queue report. I put barcode numbers, scannable barcodes on there, so that if people didn't find things, they didn't have to look it up. They could just scan the barcode to go right to the item and then mark it as missing. Things like that. I even have one that can be printed out on a piece of receipt paper that comes out well in a piece of receipt printer.
I'd have to
paper.
ask you about that barcode one. That sounds really interesting.
I'll if it's not on the SQ, if it's not in the SQL library, I'll put it in there.
Yeah, I'll take a look.
And since there's interest in it, maybe Christopher and I can do a video about it, how to add barcodes to a report, because it's not that hard to add barcodes to a report if you want barcodes in a report.
So you actually have a scannable barcode on the report. Are you worried that they'll trigger things without having it in their hand? I mean, like,
yeah, oh, totally. I'm totally worried about that.
Okay. Yeah,
and that's why I have a version with barcodes and without. I have a
Okay.
couple of libraries that they like the barcodes on there, because if they don't find things, it's a lot easier for them to mark them as missing. But there is that potential to accidentally check something in or accidentally check something out directly from the sheet. Yeah, that's there's another one in the release notes here. Request.pl reinvents koha : patron : is expired something. So I have no idea what that enhancement does, or that bug fix.
Sounds like it removes redundant code.
Probably. There's another one here. Add infinite scrolling to pickup location dropdowns. And make the pickup location dropdowns JS reusable. So there's a couple of those I get, and a couple of them I would really have to read the bug and take a look at the patches to know what exactly they're doing. And I don't know that I see anything else here about circulation specifically. So hopefully that's some good information. There are some patron enhancements too. Patrons, add a new field to patron record, main contact method. So we have it looks like that builds in a permanent field. We've been for years using a patron extended attribute to do that, but it looks like somebody has asked that to be a permanent part of the borrower record. So here's another one. Actually, I kind of like this one. Split borrower permission into create, edit, and delete. So make it so that people can create patrons and edit patrons, but not be able to delete them. That's an interesting enhancement. Add span to patron category type codes in patron search result. So that way you can, if it has a span around it, it'll be easier to modify with jQuery or CSS. Make the housebound module show delivery preferences when scheduling deliveries in the housebound module. This one is a little more technical. I'm not sure exactly what it does. Let's see. Use JavaScript to set history state during patron search. This patch modifies the process of searching patrons by the first letter of their surname so that the search is added to the browser's history. This allows the user to use the back button to return to the search after clicking the results. Okay, so that actually can be helpful. You do a search, you get a set of results, and then you click on one of those names that's the wrong one, and then you go back. You get the results instead of having to do the search over again. I think that's what that's supposed to fix, but I'm not 100% sure without looking at it more closely. Make the display of patron restriction charges, notes, etc. consistent between the checkout and the details page. That would be nice. I actually look forward to that because right now the messages are displayed in different ways and in different order, and so this will make those consistent. Make the patron modification auto open panel for referring patron record. And that one doesn't have any description on it. I would have to look and see at the bug to see what that does exactly. Make the account summary print tables configurable. Oh, so this would allow the system administrator to go in and set the account summary. It makes the account summary more configurable when you print it out. So, and then finally use Bootstrap button menu and modal for adding patrons to lists. Okay. And that's it for patrons. So I don't see anything else that really is circulation related here. So now we all totally understand everything that's coming in 2111. That's perfect.
I'm ready to upgrade tomorrow.
Sure.
No, don't sign me up. I guess I can share back on the topic of holds queues, because we do live and die by the holds queue, but it would be so much easier if I switched it to a report. So maybe I'll try and push that. There's been a long-standing bug where my sharks and fishes setup doesn't work correctly. So if I have a local holds policy set up where I don't want the library to borrow new items, but that library puts a hold on a new item, it still shows up on the other library's queue, but it can't be triggered because the rules are blocking it. So I've used jQuery to remove that from the holds queue, the core holds queue. But I have some libraries that use the print button, the data tables print button, to actually print from that, which just creates a print dialog page, which doesn't know which library I logged into, which means I can't hide that. So I was playing around with the idea of adding fish to the holds queue. I'll show you my screen. And we've decided this is just a dead end and I don't need to do it, but interesting because I learned you could use emojis and prepend them. So there's my fish, to indicate that this hold doesn't actually need pulled because the fish library doesn't share their new stuff, so we restrict sharing to everyone else's new stuff. So I've been playing with that, but it breaks some things. So I was like trying to rebuild the table, it breaks the column settings, buttons. But I think I'm gonna give up on that anyways. But I think I will file that bug because it's it didn't used to work that way. It used to not populate those holds on the holds queue because they obviously can't be triggered. So I think there is a bug in there somewhere.
I wonder if it's related to that. It seems like there was a patch that when you scan something now and it triggers a hold, it takes it off the holds queue immediately.
I think it's been this way a long time. I've just never really addressed it. It's several versions ago where it stopped working, and I just made up the jQuery to work around it. So
Okay.
I need to do my due diligence and actually file the bug.
Well, I just posted a link to a paste bin. That's the code that I use for the report that puts the scannable barcode into the report. And the one thing I would say about this is it uses a specialized that LBRANCH in the runtime parameters. LBRANCH is a custom authorized values table I use in Koha. And so you would want to change that to just branches if you're going to use it at your library. But that, if you run that report, it'll get you a holds report that has a barcode in it that you can scan, a printable barcode that you can scan right off the page instead of just a number. But Daniel, I will also find a time to put that up on the SQL library on the Koha wiki too.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's the barcodes are there, and actually there is in the SQL library there are instructions on how to do not only the barcode 3 of 9, but you can do, and there's like 4 or 5 different fonts built into Koha directly. So if you don't like that barcode font, you can turn them into QR codes. You can turn them into other kinds of barcodes to scan. Which actually, Jason, that might be a way to get around people accidentally scanning barcodes, is you just put them in a barcode font they can't scan.
But I guess that kind of defeats the purpose of the barcode being there entirely, though.
Yeah,
right?
I can picture at some of my libraries, if they were in QR codes, not all the libraries have barcode scanners yet that can scan those.
So actually, I do have a circulation question, and throw it out to you folks. I have staff checking in newspapers and this just because with the serial module, and just because we've been having trouble with them being delivered. And so far I've set up through the OPAC to be notified when they come in. But does anybody know have any other way of being notified of a serial being received besides going through the OPAC?
I don't have any libraries here using serials, so it's been such a long time since I used it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm out of my depth there. We don't use it either.
We used it when I was at the library in Idaho, but we only used it at 2 libraries, and our use of it was really minimal. So and it was such a long time ago. It's been over 6 years now. So.
And then with Daniel, we're not using it for our newspapers serials. It's more of an antiquated, did we get the paper or not? We contact with delivery, but yeah, we're doing that for our magazines, but not for our newspapers.
Yeah, we were doing it when we had Symphony, and we stopped when we went to Koha, but then we were having trouble with delivery, and we had some very vocal users, and the problem was that we couldn't figure out when was the last time we got a paper in, and so I had to have them start checking stuff in. And it's been good to track when we don't get our papers, and I can take that back to the publisher. But I also have to be notified when we get them and when we don't, because I can set up a Google reminder, but that's kind of my Google reminder or Google calendar is packed right now. So
Yeah, sorry,
anyway,
I can't help.
yeah, it's no problem. Anyway, I just thought I'd throw it out there, see if anybody had any. Maybe what I'll do is if if I get everything together for this month, I can send out an agenda with that in it, see if anybody else has anything to add. So,
Or I was going to suggest, I'm looking up on koha-US.org. That might be a good question to ask the acquisitions. Don't we have an acquisitions group? Or a
Yeah, I'm
cereals
not
group?
sure where, we don't have a cereals group. I'm not sure where
well,
it would
Yeah,
really fall.
honestly,
I'd ask the
cereals is going
cataloging
the way of the
group.
dinosaur. So,
I would ask the cataloging group too, just because there's a lot, yeah, lots of people in that group that do lots of different things.
yeah, I might stop by and ask them, but yeah, I just thought I'd throw it out there. All right, do we have any other questions? Is anybody working any cool circulation reports? How's that?
I don't know that I'm working on any. I've got a whole bunch of them. These are all. I just did all my. I ran a bunch of reports for my circulation statistics. So let me pull up one that might be interesting. This is one that I think I've shared with some people. So let me find Zoom. I think I've showed this to one group or another, but I've got a list of all the libraries over here on this side, and then I've got a separate column for each day of the month. And this is how many users, like on Friday, April 1st, there were 38 people checked out, 38 different library cards were used to check out materials at Atchison. And I've got that for each day of the month. And then all the way over here, a monthly total at the end. And the report is smart enough to know which months have 30 days or 31. But it's a big bear of a report because it has essentially, it's a sub report. There's a subquery for each day of the month. But it was to answer a question that somebody asked about how many people are coming into the library on each day of the month. And I've been keeping that data now as a spreadsheet. I run that report and then I save it as a spreadsheet, and then so I have a year's worth of data right now.
So George, just to clarify on that, it's how many people are actually utilizing their card to check out materials, not how many people are coming into the library, correct?
Yeah, it's only querying Koha. So what it's doing is it's saying on this day at this location, how many people use their card to check out materials. So I think I've got it called circulation by borrower, unique borrowers, and I think that's what it's called. But I can do the same thing with that. I can put that in a paste bin. Whoops. Control C, not Control X. Just let me. But it's a big report. It's where'd it go? Yeah, it's a 644 line report. And there's that if anybody wants it then. But that's the issue with it, is each one of those columns is a separate subquery. It's a pretty simple subquery. It's, you know, all it's doing is counting the number of library cards that were used in the, I believe in the statistics table, unique cards and statistics where the type is issue or renew. So the kernel of the report is pretty simple, and then it's just repeated, you know, 32 times.
How about a report that determines which branch fills the most holds or has the most holds picked up at it?
Request statistics. Let me see what I've got for that. So that's number G2. See, when you said, does anybody have any new reports? I've got that report. It's just not, it's not a new one. So the way that, you know, and I did a presentation about this at last year's conference when when our staff go to Koha. Oh, there we go. And go to the home page. I've got this, all these statistics that I keep here. And request statistics. No. Is that the one I want? Oh, there we go. So this is my spreadsheet for 2022, but I've got in January at Atchison, there were 2,870 requests placed. 1,264 were filled. 125 requests were canceled after the item had been put on the hold shelf and was waiting to be picked up. 125 of those requests were canceled. 4 requests were canceled while the item was already on the way. 42 requests were canceled before any item was even sent to fill the request, and 5 requests expired. 562 requests were placed by staff, and 2,300 were placed in the OPAC. And so my report that does that is having a hard time loading, apparently. That was G2. So is that the kind of report you're looking for, Daniel?
So the holds filled, was it the items trapped from that library and went to another one, or were they were there and the user picked them up, checked them out there?
Requests placed is how many were placed. Requests filled is how many were made it to the hold shelf and somebody came and picked them up. Okay. That's how many were actually checked out.
Yeah, I think that's the request filled last month. That's the one that we were looking for.
Yeah, this one report's got it all. So 2022. G. Yeah, so that's this report, which I can put that in a paste bin too. So that's an easy one. It's only 163 lines long. So there you go, that's in the chat box now too. But this is the same kind of thing where I've got one report that's running a bunch of separate subqueries to generate each column. And the way I've got it set up is that the dates that it's looking for are always anytime where the month is last month and the year is the same year as last month. So it's always looking at the previous month. So if I run it on April 1st, it's going to get, or if I run it on May 1st, it's going to give me the data for April. And if I run it on May 31st, it's going to give me the data for April. But I've got it so that it all puts all the data exactly the way I want it in my spreadsheet, so that it's less work for me, essentially. So, and the numbers, the thing that the library directors here always have trouble with is requests placed last month is how many requests did people place last month. They sat down and the request was placed during the month, and the requests filled last month, that number is always different. And the reason it's always different is it's always substantially lower, is because that's how many were actually checked out last month. It's not, it doesn't matter when they were placed. They could have been placed a year ago. The one thing that this report won't count, or it has trouble counting, is if somebody puts a date not needed, like the hold expires after a certain amount of time. We have our system set up where if somebody places a request in the OPAC, it automatically puts an expiration date on there of a year from now. So if that request sits there and it doesn't get filled for a year, that is hard to record when those are removed from the data. So
I put my wimpy little report in there for this. So I don't have as complex tracking as George does, but I did evidently have a request to have this information looked up. So I have one that just does like a date filter where you can put in a date range and it tells you how many holds were filled at each branch in that date range.
yeah, the reason that I have it so that it puts all this data in a spreadsheet is because I've had all these questions in the last few years where people, and I had this question right before the Koha conference last September, is somebody said, I need to know circulation by zip code for the last, back to 2008. And we don't keep data far enough back to do that. One of the things I was able to say to them is you weren't even using Koha in 2008. You've only been using Koha since 2011. So you're asking for data that isn't even that wouldn't even be in Koha, even if we did keep the data that long. So I have a lot of reports that I run monthly, and then I save them in spreadsheets, because that way, I've got data for just general circulation data that we save just going back to 2017, which is the first full year that I was here, because that way, when somebody says, how many borrowers did we add in June of 2017, I can answer that question. It's harder to answer that question if you're just relying on Koha, because when somebody gets deleted, you're no longer able to really count their data. And we have a lot of data that we only keep for 1 year, and a lot of data that we only keep for 2 years, for the sake of it. It certainly makes it a lot more private for patrons. They have kind of a guarantee that their data isn't, that people aren't going to be able to look up their phone number that they had 10 years ago, that kind of stuff. It's not in the system.
Jason, can you clarify what report that is? I'm sorry that you pasted in there.
Oh, it does a small portion of what George's does, but with a filter. So that's showing you all the holes that were filled at each branch with a count
Oh, got it.
in a date range that you select.
Okay. Thank you both, George. That's great information. And thank you, Jason.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. It's coming up to an hour now, so I think we can call this a day. Thanks for everybody for showing up, and hopefully everything will be back to kind of normal next month. So
Yeah,
All right.
good luck on that.
yeah. Everybody take care, and see you around the koha-US groups. Bye.
See you later,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Daniel.